The fall ministry season is nigh. It is virtually upon us. I don't know where you live, but if you live in the United States, then you know that today, as of me releasing this video, is September 1st, which means pretty much that it's the start of the fall ministry season, at least in the United States, which for us means summer's over. People are back from vacation. They have a more regular schedule, which translates into more things happening at church because people aren't away all the time. So we can plan more things at church, and usually the ministry season, whatever that means, picks back up again. But as we head into this renewed new ministry season, there are certain things that we as worship leaders should do before it actually officially kicks in that will help us in the months to come leading up to Christmas and even afterwards until we hit January 1st, when sort of a new year starts and we have a chance to do it all over again. So what can you do as a worship leader beforehand or right at the beginning of that will prepare you for this new ministry season? And I'm not saying that in some weird supernatural way. I'm just saying things pick back up in the fall. So what can we do to prepare ourselves for that? And I think that this, number one, is the most impactful at the beginning of the season, and that is to reset or restate expectations, or maybe to state your expectations for your worship team in the first place and you never actually stated them. Here's what's true. As we enter into this fall season, new semester, school kicks back up, I still don't ever know what to call it. I will call it the fall season of ministry. As we head into this fall season of ministry, it serves as a natural transition point. You only get a couple throughout the year. There's this one. There's the new year. There might be one other one somewhere in there, but typically I think of those two. And these are natural transition points in the year that we can use to benefit our ministry and talk about things that we don't usually at least feel comfortable talking about. We always have the opportunity to talk about it. But when it comes to expectations for your worship team, this is the perfect time to set those expectations, because the conversation is really easy. It's something like this. Hey, things are about to pick back up again. I'm really excited for this fall season of ministry as we lead up to Christmas. And as we step back in to a more regular routine in our church calendar, I want us to focus on this for this season. For these next 3 or 4 months, this is what we're going to be focusing on as a worship team. And I left that purposefully ambiguous because you get to decide what your team most needs to focus on in this season. But this right now, and then you can also do it when the new year comes, this right now is the perfect time to reset, restate, or just finally implement the expectations that you want for your worship team. And when you do it, I would suggest, if you're going to introduce something new, pick one thing. All right, this is like a war that we're fighting, not a single battle. So pick one battle you want to fight for this season. If it is, I want people to show up on time to worship rehearsal, something that a lot of you complain about to me, that you tell me your teams don't show up on time. What do you say? You say, hey team, as we enter back into a regular rhythm of the church calendar, the one thing that I want us to focus on is I like to put the blame on myself. I am going to be more intentional about starting our rehearsals on time and ending them on time, which means that it's no longer just a recommendation that you show up at 6:30 for worship rehearsal, but at 6:30, we are going to start worship rehearsal because I want to be respectful of your time so that I'm not wasting anybody's time. So I'm going to be more intentional about that this year, which means that at 6:30, when Thursday or Wednesday, whenever you have your worship rehearsal starts, when Thursday comes at 6:30, we're going to be starting right then. We're going to open up with prayer, do a devotional, and then we're going to head into the songs, and then we're going to be done by 8 o'clock or whatever time, however long you think you need. We're going to be done. So from 6:30 to 8, I really want to be intentional about that time because it's going to allow me to respect your time more, but it's also going to force us to act more efficiently. So this season, we're going to focus on starting at 6:30, being done by 8, which means with all effort, I would love for you to be here right at 6:30, set up and ready to go, and let's just see how it goes for this season. And I think that it's going to serve us well. See how I kept working in we're doing it for this season. This is something new that we're trying. I didn't do this in previous seasons of the church calendar. Maybe it was my fault, maybe it was their fault. I don't know. I don't need to point fingers at them necessarily. We're going to work on it together as a team now. But the catalyst for the change that is not awkward, it's not you reactionary, like, you guys are always late to rehearsals and we need to fix this right now. Although that might be a valid conversation. I wouldn't put it like that, but that could be a valid conversation. But I'm just saying it's easy during this transition period to set new expectations or reestablish old expectations. So please, if you have a change that you want to see implemented in your worship ministry, do it right now. Now is the time. Do not wait. This is the perfect transition period. So just bring it up to your team. Pick one thing, bring it up to your team, focus on it until Christmas, and then hopefully it's implemented into your team. Now, I've hinted at it already, but the second thing that we need to do to prepare for the fall ministry season, or at the beginning of the fall ministry season, is, what do I keep saying? I say we're going to be from September until what? Until Christmas comes. Guess what, guys? Christmas is coming. And we need to prepare for it. Now you're thinking to yourself, well, Spencer, I have September, I have October, I have November. Christmas is until the end of December. I have 4 months. And yes, that's right. It might seem a little bit early to start planning for Christmas, but here's what I've found to be true in my worship ministry. The longer I give an idea to marinate, the better it gets. I've talked about this on this channel before. I call it the slow cooker theory or the marination theory, but I like the slow cooker name better. But the idea is, if you want to cook something and have it taste really good in a slow cooker crock pot, you can put it in there for 2 hours and it'll be done. It won't be very good, but it'll be cooked and edible. Or you can let it cook all day for 8 hours or 10 hours or however long you want, and it will be that much better when it's time to enjoy the final outcome. I find the same to be true with ideas in my worship ministry. And so when it comes to Christmas, a lot of us at our churches, we want to do something special for Christmas, and I'm pretty sure Christmas Eve is on a Sunday this year, so I don't know how that affects you, but maybe you didn't even realize that until now. Now you're freaking out. The point is, start planning it now. You don't need to have everything fleshed out. The good part about the crockpot theory is that we put an idea not fully formed into the crockpot, and the longer we allow it to cook or put it in the marinade concoction, I'm just making up stuff now. Allow it to marinate, the better it gets with time. And so what that tangibly means is, okay, I'm going to take just 1 hour. This is what I think you should do and what I should be doing as well. Take 1 hour this week, next week, at the start of the fall ministry season. Sit down and start thinking about Christmas. Just for 1 hour. Think, is there a new song I want to introduce? Are there special elements to my Christmas service? How am I going to balance the fact, and obviously work with your pastor with this, but what are we going to do for Christmas? Are we going to have a service in the morning on Sunday and then one in the evening for Christmas Eve? And then are we going to have one the next day for Christmas Day if you guys do a Christmas Day service? Start thinking about these things, and you don't have to have them fully fleshed out, but as you get just like the base idea, your brain will work in the background over the next month or 2 months or however long you wait until you actually intentionally start planning for Christmas, and those thoughts will be in the background of your mind marinating. It will happen almost subconsciously, and as you get ideas, write them down and add them to the list. And then when you get 3 months, 2 months out, whenever you feel like it's time to start planning for Christmas intentionally, then you'll have all these ideas already. And not only will you not be starting from zero 2 months before Christmas starts, but they'll also be better ideas because you have been, at the very least, subconsciously thinking about them in the background of your brain for the past month or 2 months or however long it's been. So take an hour. That's all it takes. Carve out an hour and just think, What are we going to do for Christmas this year? Brainstorm some ideas. You don't have to have it all fleshed out. Just start thinking about it and then let it marinate in the back of your mind for the beginning of this fall ministry season. Now, what is the hallmark of the fall ministry season? It is that things get crazy again. And maybe you already felt like things were crazy in the summer. I don't know what you have in the summer, but you probably had maybe you had VBS or something. But typically, things happen. We were just looking at our church calendar as a staff last week, or actually it was this week, and I was frankly a little bit overwhelmed with everything that's going to be happening now that Wednesday nights kick back up at our church, and we've got this event and this event and this event. So, in the midst of the busyness, or rather before the busyness begins, I want to encourage you, number 3, take a day off. Take a moment to breathe, prepare yourself for the fall ministry season. There are times in ministry of harvest, working hard. There are times of Sabbath rest. There are moments of push, 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 moments of let's wait a second, catch our breath. This is the rhythm of ministry, all right? If you always just push, 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 you're going to burn out eventually. But, I always make these videos about taking a day off, and people don't like them. I don't know why, but it's not that they don't like them, but they don't watch them, so they must not think it's important. I'm telling you that this is important. You can run hard like a sprint for 3 years, 5 years, but you will eventually burn out, or you can run as if ministry were a marathon, which it is. Pick your battles, take your time. You have an eternity to bring God glory. So, before the ministry season kicks back up, schedule a day off. Just take a moment to catch your breath and then get ready to run. Now, after you take your day off, not only do we want to rest for the season, but at the start of the season, this is something I love to do. I love to set up one system that is going to benefit me through this season. And think about this. And when I say a system, here's what I mean. I mean, there are things that we do on a regular basis in our worship ministry that can be systematized. And so often we don't systematize them. And so we just end up doing the same task over and over again when we could just do it once and not have to do it over and over again, and it would save us so much time. There are things, if you think about them, I'll name some examples here in a second. There are things, if you think about them, that you do over and over and over again in your worship ministry that you don't need to do over and over and over again in your worship ministry. You can do them once and use that as a template. You can maybe it's not even a template, it's just something automated that happens. And you do it once, and then you don't have to worry about it again, and it ends up saving you hours and hours in your worship ministry, because instead of taking an hour to do it every week, it takes 10 minutes to do it every week, because you already have the 50-minute chunk systematized. What are some examples of this? Number one, I think of, and this is sort of a bigger example, but how are you going to implement people onto your worship team? How are you going to find people for your worship team? How are you going to get more members on your worship team? You can systematize that. One of the ways you can start to do that, at least, is to have an application form for people to fill out. And so now, instead of somebody wants to join the worship team and you have to go to them and talk to them one-on-one, which you'll eventually do. We want to meet these people. We're not trying to anonymize the process, but instead of trying to figure it out every time somebody wants to join the worship team, you say, hey, thanks so much for your interest. Can you fill out this application form? And this is part of the systematizing. You have an application form made for them. Let's make this application form, and then I'll send you a link, and then you can fill that out, and then we'll pick back up from there after you fill that out, and we'll do an interview and an audition, so on and so forth until they're on your worship team. But if we systematize these steps, now, instead of trying to figure it out every time somebody wants to join our worship team, what we're going to do, we already know the process, and so it takes 5 seconds. All you say is, thanks for your interest, let me send you an application form. There's the next step, as opposed to, hey, that's great, let me get back to you in a week and kind of tell you what I'm thinking about how we can get you implemented into the worship team. And then you have to go think about it for a week and then send them an email and so on and so forth, instead of having the system in place. So that's one small example of a larger system. If you just systematize the first step, you never have to worry about it again. Now, that's something that might happen infrequently in your worship ministry. So really, the priority for systematizing things should be things that we do every single week. So let's talk about one of those things. One of the things that I think of is maybe sending out the song set list. I don't know if you use Planning Center, you use Planning Center. But if you use an email to send it out, if you just text it to your team, I know plenty of people do that. I like to have a template that I have for my team, and all it says, and I think that this is okay, guys. You don't have to write a new correspondence every time you talk to somebody, especially if it happens on a weekly basis. You just say, hey guys, super excited for practice this week at 6:30 because we're going to start at 6:30. On Thursday, we're going to start right at 6:30. Here are the songs. Here's who's leading them. Here's the MP3s. Here's the chord charts. Here's whatever. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks so much. Spencer Cormany. Like, I use literally that template every single week. So don't feel like you have to come up with something new to say every single week. People don't even read those things. Anyways, to be frank, they might look at the song set list. Hopefully they look at the song set list, but they aren't reading about how I hope you had a great week and I know this happened and this happened and this is coming up at church. Just send them the song set list and systematize it so you don't even have to think about it. All you do is plug in the necessary resources, the songs, the keys, the MP3s, the chord charts, whatever, and move on with your day. Now, just like setting the expectations at the beginning of this natural transition season in your ministry is a good idea, I think there's also a natural transition here to host a worship team workshop. I think that it's very easy to have the conversation. As we step into this fall ministry season, I've got this worship team workshop planned for you. And so we're going to get together outside of our normal rehearsal time, maybe on a Saturday is when I like to do it. And we are going to get together and work intentionally on something. That can be something theological, that can be something musical, that can just be relational, whatever your goal is for your team. If you're like, we want to grow in our understanding of what it means to worship God, focus on theology. If you're like, we need to focus musically in this season, focus on music. If you need to focus on building the relationships in your team, focus on relationships. But I think it is helpful to not just work in your ministry for your worship team. It's going to be a busy season. They're going to show up every week at rehearsal on time, hopefully, and they're going to be working in your worship ministry. But it's also important if we want to develop to work on our worship ministry. And in order to do that, we need to take a step outside of the normal rhythm and routine where we're just serving every week because Sunday is coming, and there are moments even in that regular rhythm that you should be developing your team. But to take a step back and say, this day is for the sole purpose of improving whatever we want to improve. Maybe we want to learn a few new songs. Maybe we want to focus on, maybe you don't have click tracks at your church and you want to focus on implementing that. Maybe you want to teach your team what it means to lead worship and not just play music. Whatever it is, you don't get the chance for more than 15 minutes, maybe a half an hour, however long you take for your devotional time, if you have that at your worship rehearsal. You don't get that much time to focus on that during the regular rhythm of worship ministry. So take a step back, say on Saturday, we're all going to meet together, and I promise you that that will be a time of not just learning, even if it is just like a theological concept, but it will also be a time of building relationships with each other, because we build relationships in the regular rhythm, but also like when people come and they don't really have a responsibility, they're not like preparing for Sunday. It's just like, we're going to show up and be fed. We're going to be poured into so that we can develop as a team. Now, I know that it's hard to set up that worship team workshop. You're asking yourself, where am I going to get the teaching? Do I have to teach it? Do I have to come up with 2.5 hours to teach my team? How am I going to make it significant for them? I don't even know where to start doing that. Should I bring somebody in? That's probably going to cost a lot of money. Maybe we'll go to a conference, but wait, that costs a lot of money too. Well, I've got good news, because I've been working over the past several months to put together a virtual worship team workshop, which I'm so excited to share with you. It's about the theology of worship, laying the foundation for what is worship, what is corporate worship, what is a worship leader, and then how do we fulfill that role. So if you feel like your team can grow in their theology of what worship is, what it means to lead worship, and then practically how that plays out on Sunday mornings, that's why I created this worship team workshop, and it's coming out in just a few weeks. So join the waitlist. There's a link in the description below if you're interested in that. Basically, your team would come together on a Saturday morning or whatever time's convenient for you, and I provide all the teaching material, and then you break into small groups, and I provide all of the discussion questions for you to discuss the material that you just learned and how to apply it to your specific context. And in that, your team will learn, what is worship? What is corporate worship? I'm a worship leader. What's a worship leader? And how do I fulfill my role on Sunday? So check that out down in the description below. Join the waitlist. It'll be out in just a few weeks. I can't wait to share it with you. Other than that, thanks so much for joining me. Until I see you in the next video. Keep leading worship well.